When watching the movie Carrie, there are some obvious pop culture references that can be seen as having drawn inspiration from the film, the most obvious being Stranger Things and the telepathic powers of Eleven. There's also a high school movie flair that feels very familiar to those who've seen The Breakfast Club, High School Musical, or similar teen movies. As I was watching it though, I couldn't help but compare the film to a very different movie, Joker. Joker was not a high school movie at all, and it doesn't fit the definition of a typical comic book movie either. But it does share some similarities to Carrie with how they address social isolation and mental health. The most obvious similarity is that both films are character studies, hence their movies' names. Carrie is a story that essentially follows the life and downfall of Carrie White, while Joker is a movie about the life and downfall of Arthur Fleck. Now, when I use the word downfall, I mean to say that both stories deal with characters becoming something dangerous or tragic. That isn't to say either character is explicitly evil. That's something to discuss later. For now, let's consider how both films frame these characters thematically. Carrie White is a high school student raised in a hyper-religious home with her mother Margaret. A lot happens in the story outside of that, but this upbringing is at the core of much of Carrie's problems. Arthur Fleck, on the other hand, is a failing comic who suffers from a mental illness that causes him to uncontrollably laugh. Arthur, too, lives with his mother who instead has an obsession with her former boss, wealthy mayor and billionaire Thomas Wayne. In Carrie, religious upbringing results in confusion and trauma. This influences Carrie's emotional response to her first period, and the subsequent attempts to explain her telepathic powers as either demonic or divine. Arthur, on the other hand, never develops telepathic powers, but he is a byproduct of a broken economic system that treats the mental health of the underprivileged as inconsequential. This contempt for being different is ultimately what leads both characters to violence. These thematic elements are what place Carrie and Arthur at odds with the social order. Carrie is viewed by society as a religious oddball, while Arthur is viewed as deranged and insignificant. Likewise, each character is treated as a laughingstock, in Joker's case quite literally. When Arthur uncontrollably laughs, he's berated by the ruling class, or mocked simply for the condition. Carrie is named prom queen only to realize it was an elaborate prank to embarrass her in front of the entire school. Both characters suffer under stressful circumstances, but instead of receiving support, society treats their suffering as an idiosyncrasy. While Arthur does receive social services for his condition, the movie demonstrates through indifference that the system is ineffective. In this sense, both movies deal with the consequences of mental health and what happens when society ignores them. I should note that some critics consider Joker to be a poor reflection of mental health and class, but I feel this criticism is largely missing the point. Joker is as much a poor reflection on class as Carrie is on religion. Neither movie is making the claim that struggles with mental health, in either case, explicitly leads to violence, but are forewarning of a society that chooses to dismiss or disparage them. Another similarity of both films is how they use the climax to shift each character from social pariah to imminent threat. Following a failed comedic act, Arthur is invited onto the Murray Franklin show, where the host intends to lampoon Arthur. Instead, Arthur appears on the show as his new persona, Joker, and proceeds to murder Murray Franklin on live television. In a similar fashion, Carrie is invited to prom as the date of Tommy Ross, who Carrie's peers arrange for the purpose of publicly humiliating her. After being suddenly submersed in Red Pig's blood on the prom stage, Carrie uses her telepathy to murder everyone in sight, Tommy included. The one major difference in the comparison to Murray is that Tommy was unaware of the plan to publicly mock Carrie. But in Carrie's eyes, the entire school was a part of the problem, Tommy included. They were all either initiators or enablers of her harassment. In Joker, the incident results in Arthur becoming a symbol of the underprivileged in the city. Characters like Thomas Wayne are made to be villains. Speaking of which, the caricature of Thomas Wayne as a representation of the ruling class is interesting when compared to Arthur's mother's obsession with Wayne. Throughout the film, both Carrie and Arthur have maternal figures whose unhealthy obsessions are in conflict with their children's best interests. Carrie's mother Margaret believes her daughter to be possessed by a demon, while Arthur learns his mother Penny is convinced he's the son of Thomas Wayne. Both Carrie and Arthur eventually fall victim to these delusions. Carrie's dogmatic beliefs and mockery turn her into the demonic figure her mother forebodes. As for Arthur, he becomes convinced that Magnate Thomas Wayne is his father, causing further psychological distress. Both movies use the mother as a direct correlation between the protagonists and the movie's themes, making their commentaries on religion and class into something personal to the characters. In addition to the mothers, both films explore delusion more broadly. In Joker, the film goes so far as to have an open-ended conclusion that leads the audience to wonder if any of the events were even real. During the prom sequence of Carrie, the camera pans the crowd of laughing students and teachers from her perspective. The scene feels almost dreamlike, possibly implying an exaggeration or distortion of the actual events. This could also be reinforced by both films' usage of color. Carrie herself being named Carrie White implies true innocence. Even so, characters' clothes throughout the film are color-coded red and blue. This stylistic choice could imply something deeper about the overall stories. Some may speculate the use of blue and red is just synonymous with good and evil, hence Carrie's blood-covered wardrobe during the prom sequence. However, I do not believe the filmmakers of Joker or Carrie are implying these characters, when wearing red, become evil. After all, they are the victims of social harassment. I believe the colors instead represent the authenticity of the character. When someone is wearing blue in Carrie, they are often hiding something, either to conform to social expectations or to be manipulative. A good example of this is Miss Collins, whose assistance to Carrie never fully feels genuine or sincere. At the prom, the room is also illuminated in blue lights, with attendees wearing blue suits and dresses. During the announcement of prom queen, the crowd cheers for Carrie when she is selected, only to turn on her the moment she's covered in blood. In the movie Joker, Murray Franklin is first introduced to the viewer in a blue suit. He later invites Arthur on his show, a lifelong dream of the character, with the full intent of humiliating him. Both movies present blue as false innocence, a mask that hides a judgmental society under a good facade. This is even true for the audience of the Murray Franklin show, who are illuminated in blue, watching joyfully as the elite make a mockery of a mentally ill man. The color red, on the other hand, represents true authenticity. When Carrie is covered in pig's blood on the prom stage, she finally embraces her powers in front of the school and stops trying to conform to the social order. In Joker, the filmmakers do the same thing by introducing Arthur's persona in a red suit. This is particularly interesting, given the character Joker is historically famous for his purple tuxedo. Nevertheless, when Arthur dons his red attire, he finally becomes his authentic self. In the end, both movies' climaxes show a blue-lit audience that watches in horror as their source of laughter turns to blood-red murder. Both Carrie and Joker reveal the problems with how their societies address mental health. Through their specific themes, both stories challenge the social systems which parody the trauma of classism and religious extremism. Ultimately, both movies are a cautionary tale of the consequences of ignoring or persecuting others for being different. Neither film is certainly for everyone. There are sombering character studies which take their fairly simple comic book and high school inspirations and offer seething commentaries on society. Still, for the right viewer, Joker and Carrie showcase the importance of mental health and the impact every person has on creating a society that doesn't laugh, but listens.